Everyone still remembers that recent sneak peek glitch showed at San Diego Comic-Con, and probably the most intriguing part of that so-called leak was definitely that private room.
This is a private room where nobody can see or hear you once inside. And this is a loaded gun.
As I see it, the private room might serve as a kind of transition between the beginning of the episode and the main adventure. Cause let's be real, it'd be pretty silly to think the private room will be the main adventure for the entire episode. In my previous video, I said everyone might talk to everyone, but now that I've thought about it more, that would take way too long and end up making the intro feel kinda dragged out. Since we only have 6 characters, it makes perfect sense to split them into 3 pairs. The least interesting pair would probably be Kinger and Gangle. There's no real connection or backstory between them, so their convo might be super short. And yeah, it'd be kind of funny if that meme turned out to be true, but when it comes to Jax, there's actually a way more interesting person for him to talk to. And no, I'm not talking about Pomni, because they're gonna have plenty of time to talk later, and I'll explain that too. Right now, Zooble is the perfect match for this moment, and even that sneak peek hinted at it.
He's the one that cracks everything all the time.
You are in a mood today, aren't you?
I am not falling into Jax's arms, if that's what you mean.
Ever since the pilot, it's been pretty clear there's something weird going on between Jax and Zooble. I'm like 100% sure something happened between them in the past, and that's why Zooble's always been so harsh toward him. But it's also totally possible she's just sick and tired of his jokes and messing around. Either way, it's going to be super interesting to see them actually talk one-on-one in the private room, where no one else can interrupt or listen in. And of course, the most obvious pair is Pomni and Ragatha. By now, it's obvious Pomni's kind of a lifeline for Ragatha, and after what we saw in episode 5, it really feels like Ragatha's last shot at a normal life in the circus is slowly slipping away. But that's a big topic we'll dive into a bit later. For now, just keep in mind that the private room's more like a bridge between the intro and the main adventure, and using all the most important official info we've got, let's finally break it all down. But before that, there's a few more things we gotta keep in mind. One time, Gooseworx straight up said that episodes 5 and 6 would be equally focused on Jax and Ragatha, and judging by what went down in episode 5, that makes total sense. And if that's the case, then these episodes are probably meant to be one big continuous story. So episode 6 is basically a direct continuation of episode 5, just like what we had with the pilot and episode 2. On top of that, it's super important to remember that episode 5 kinda wrapped up the whole era of chill setup type episodes that were slowly leading us into the core of what the digital circus is really about. And starting from episode 6, we're headed straight into the storm. Before we dive into the plot, let's take a quick look back at the final scene of episode 5.
I thought the first 2 were awesome. The rest, eh. Oh yeah, Pomni. I can show you that thing in the hall I was talking about.
Oh yeah, sure.
We clearly see 2 things that are going to have a direct impact on episode 6. So first, let's talk about Pomni and Jax, who at this point seem like legit good friends, and once they walk off together, they'll probably have a convo. And the main thing they're going to talk about is obviously Ribbit, because we've seen more than once how curious Pomni is about that whole thing.
What was that about?
It's nothing. Who cares?
So, you wanna talk about that?
I'm in a maid outfit. What do you think?
And I'm pretty sure that in a moment like that, Jax is actually going to tell her the full truth. And while that's happening, we'll probably get a kind of flashback from Jax's memory that takes us back to the day it all went down. And if you remember how Jax reacted when Kaufmo turned into an abstracted monster, it's totally possible that those words Gooseworx talked about were actually meant for Ribbit during his own abstraction. And on top of that, they're probably going to share some pretty personal stuff with each other. So, right before the chaos hits, we're finally going to get to truly understand who these characters really are. The final scene also gave us one more big detail, which is Ragatha's full-on collapse, or like her final moment of being done with everything. Even though we already noticed some weird stuff about her back in the pilot, she kept it pretty well hidden through the next few episodes, up until episode 5, where after Jax and Pomni became friends, you could say her whole world just fell apart. And most likely, while we're watching that convo between Pomni and Jax, we're also going to see Ragatha wandering around the digital circus, and that teaser we got is probably a direct reference to that moment. But that's just the beginning of the episode, because we still haven't gotten to the classic scene where Kane gathers everyone, and then they all head out on another adventure. Honestly, I don't know if this one's going to be pulled from the suggestion box or just made up by Kane, but either way, it's definitely going to be the farm. And that's exactly where the first stage of that storm Gooseworx mentioned on Tumblr is going to kick off. The farm's crazy symbolic for both of the main characters in this episode. And most likely, both Jax and Ragatha are gonna end up playing out roles that reflect who they were in real life. That's when we'll finally find out the truth about how they're connected. I'm like 100% sure these two were never a couple, cause Gooseworx straight up hates that kind of theory, so that's definitely not canon, but the idea that they could be siblings totally makes sense. Plus, we already know Ragatha's older than Jax, and that's probably why in a lot of scenes she acts like some kind of older sister. I even made a whole separate video where I broke down all the evidence for that theory, but it's important to remember it's still just a theory and, yeah, it might end up being wrong. But what really sticks with me is the fact that they were definitely connected in some way back in the real world, and that same feeling hits me when I think about why Jax is so terrified of corn, like what actually happened to him on that farm that messed him up so bad. And I think I might have figured it out, but to get there, we gotta go back to Ragatha's monologue. We get that Ragatha grew up in a pretty strict family where her mom wanted her to be an obedient and perfect daughter, but we also learned her family was pretty rich and could afford a lot of things. I feel like during the adventure in episode 6, we're gonna get way more details about Ragatha's past, and it's pretty likely her family was super conservative, and you could even say aristocratic. It makes total sense for families like that to have all kinds of workers, from gardeners to corn pickers. And what if that corn picker was actually Jax and Ragatha's family treated him pretty badly, but Ragatha herself was nice to him, and that's why she kinda took on the role of an older sister. But besides that, episode 6 might be a turning point for Ragatha, cause during or right after it, we're gonna find out what her future looks like. And if you think back to how jealous Ragatha gets about the friendship between Pomni and Jax.
First steps of a budding friendship, right, Ragatha?
Hey, Pomni. Remember when Kaufmo smashed me against the walls and I got all jumbled up? All things considered, that was pretty funny, right?
It's clear she totally gets how messed up her mental state is already getting close to full-on depression and even abstraction. And because of that, she desperately needs a real friendship with Pomni, because that's the only way she can prove to herself first and foremost that she's a good person, and finally break free from those messed up childhood standards that have been weighing her down. That would make Ragatha's life way easier, and that's why during the adventure, she's gonna do everything she can to win back Pomni's trust, just like back in episode 3. But after everything that went down in episode 5...
Calm down a bit.
What? You're the one who said it's fine to be a jerk sometimes. I'm sorry, Pomni.
That's gonna make it way harder for her to do so. So yeah, now you've got the full picture of the new adventure and the key stuff about the farm in episode 6. But what if things don't go as planned and Ragatha totally loses her reason for being in the digital circus and just accepts that her end is near and she's about to meet Kaufmo? Well, in that case, that could be the start of the so-called storm. Cause don't forget episode 5 clearly hinted that mysterious mannequin's gonna play a big role in the digital circus. Of course, that's not everything there is to say, and I'm gonna save a couple more interesting facts and moments for part 2. As always, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch y'all soon.